So I had this old scrap fabric laying around from an old shirt, and I honestly just wanted to see if I could make something out of it. I decided to make a sort of scrunched tie top shirt. Because this was an old shirt, some of the pieces were already hemmed. So I started by hemming everything that needed to be hemmed before I pieced it together. I then added the lining fabric to the part of the shirt that will be the bust. Flipped it inside out, folded it under, and stitched down the edge of the lining. I then pieced together the front and the back, making sure to leave room on the back panel where the channel for the tie will be. I then stitched a channel on the front and made the ties. I made 2 short ties and 1 long one that will act as the straps and the tie around the waist. Used a safety pin to feed the tie through, and here is the final product. It kind of has a little bit of a teddy feel to it. I think it's cute. Alright, let's talk French seam. A French seam is a way of finishing off a seam without a serger. To start, you're going to match up your seams like you normally would, only now you are going to have the wrong sides of the fabric together and the right sides facing out. I know it seems backwards, but bear with me. Do a 1/4 inch stitch all the way down. Then you are going to fold the fabric in half so that the right sides of the fabric are now facing each other and the wrong sides of the fabric are out. Then you will do a second stitch, increasing your seam allowance to about 1/2 inch. This is so the raw edge stays sandwiched between the 2 fabrics and doesn't poke out. Here is how the inner seam will look, and the outside. French seams offer an easy, clean, finished look. Let's talk fabric scissors and why you should only ever use them for fabric. Every cut you make dulls your blades, and materials like paper and plastic are abrasive and can dull your blades faster, or damage them completely. Here I have 3 pairs of scissors, some utility scissors from my garage, fabric scissors my husband got a hold of, and my current fabric scissors. You can tell that the utility scissors do not do a good job of cutting the fabric. The blades aren't sharp and the fabric folds underneath. The pink scissors still do a decent job at cutting, but they do have a chip in the blades which causes the fabric to snag. Now, I just want you to know that you do not need an expensive pair of fabric scissors. The cheap ones work just as fine as long as you keep them sharp. And for the love of all that is holy, do not do the foil trick to sharpen your scissors. It does not work. It dulls the blades faster. Just get one of these. It's like $5. So I had this long, awkward piece of fake suede fabric. So I decided to use it to make a flowy off-the-shoulder, boho-esque kind of top. Here I am taking entirely too long to cut fabric while watching a show. To do the top of the sleeve, I took a long strip of fabric and ironed it about 2/3 of the way in half. Then did a lapped seam and added a casing for elastic. For the top of the shirt, I did a 2-inch folded over hem and stitched that in place, and did a second seam about a 1/2 inch above to use as a casing, leaving room at the top for a paper bag hem effect. I then fed the elastic through the casings on the shirt and the sleeves, and stitched the seams into place. And here is where I need your help, TikTok. The shirt came out pretty dang cute. I can't decide which look I like more. Tied up at the bottom like so, or left loose and flowy like this. Let me know what you guys think. So I'm going to show you how to feed a tie, or in this case, elastic, through a casing or channel on anything you sew. It's really easy. All you have to do is use a safety pin and attach it to the end. Feed the safety pin into the casing, and you will be able to feel the hard metal of the safety pin to quickly push it through the casing and feed your elastic through. Pretty simple, easy to learn, and very effective. So once again, I'm taking apart a men's button-up to be used as fabric. So I used one of my tank tops as a template to cut out the shape I wanted, and then used that to cut out 4 more of the same shape. I also cut out some strips that I'm going to use for the straps, ironed the thinner strips in half, and then stitched them to the main portion of the sleeve, then top stitched the serge seam down, and did another stitch for a casing, and fed the elastic through. I tack stitched the sleeve onto where I wanted it to sit on the front of the shirt, as well as the ruffle. and then folded it inside so that I could sew on the lining fabric, making sure to leave one side open so I could flip everything right side out. I was originally going to do a twist tie front top like this. I wanted more coverage, so I added some darts and some extra long straps and stitched everything together, and this is the final product. I'm pretty happy with how it came out. I'm going to show you guys how to turn a tube easily without any fancy tools. All you need is a bamboo skewer or a chopstick. I like to stitch up one end like so because it makes it easier in my opinion. Feed the skewer into one end and get the fabric to fold in on itself. This is the hardest part. It requires a little bit of finagling and pinching, but once you get it, all you do is continue to pull the fabric down, pushing the skewer through the middle of the tube. Once the end pokes out like so, you take it off the skewer and continue to pull it out until you have it completely right side out. Today I'm going to show you guys how to do a lettuce hem. This is my favorite way to finish off items made with stretch fabric. Now fabric choice is very important here because it does not work on all fabric. You need something with a lot of stretch. First, change your machine to a zigzag stitch. Next, change your stitch length to the shortest length possible. Make sure your fabric is positioned so that the needle goes off the fabric on one side of the zig. When doing a lettuce hem, this is one of the only times it is okay to stretch your fabric while you sew. The zigzag stitch creates somewhat of a wrapped effect on the edge of the fabric. So doing this on stretched fabric means that the edge will stay that length while the rest of the fabric will snap back to normal, leaving this wavy effect on the edge. The more you stretch the fabric, the bigger the waves will be. I want to show you guys how to sew a curved hem. First, increase your stitch length or use a basting stitch and stitch along the edge of the curve about 1/4 inch in. Then you are going to press your full hem allowance. Here I did about 5/8 of an inch. From here, you're going to fold that hem in half along the stitch length and press that down as well. When you reach an area where the fabric is bunching, you're going to take a needle or your seam ripper and gently pull the thread slightly. You do not want to gather the fabric, just ease it up a little bit so it fits better within the hem. This helps reduce some of that bunching and allows the hem to lay flat. From here you will pin and sew like normal. Once you have sewn the hem down, you can remove that basting stitch, though it is not necessary to do so. And that is one way to sew a curved hem. Here's a quick tip for joining elastic so it doesn't slide around. Simply take a piece of Scotch tape, first sticking it to the back of your hand to reduce some of the adhesive, and use it to hold the elastic together the way you want it. This makes it so it doesn't move or slide around while you're stitching. And when you're finished, it peels off easily. I have not experienced any kind of sticky residue left behind, but it's always best to just check. And if you do find any, a little bit of alcohol on a cotton swab will clean it right up. I still had some of this seersucker fabric left over from the dress I made a few weeks ago, so I decided to make my husband a pair of summer shorts. I started by stitching the 2 back halves and 2 front halves together, making sure to leave an area for a decorative fly. I then pinned the pockets in place and stitched the 2 halves together. These shorts have a cotton lining, and this is why planning ahead is so important when it comes to sewing, because I did not, and that made these shorts a lot more difficult than they should have been. Once the shorts and the lining were stitched together, all that was left was some decorative stitches and adding the elastic to the waistband. I did a couple rows of elastic as well as adding belt loops. I was going to use this button, but I ended up not liking it. And here's the final product. He was not the most willing model, but he really does like these shorts and has already worn them a couple times. Today I want to show you guys how to add pockets to clothes. For this you'll need the item you want to use as well as some tightly woven cotton. You can print out a pocket template online or you can make one yourself by tracing your hand in this shape. Cut out 2 pieces for each pocket. Make sure to cut on folded fabric or flip the template. Keeping the right sides of the fabric together, you are going to stitch up 3 sides, making sure to leave the opening open. It should look like this. Make sure it's still big enough when stitched. Next, awkwardly put on the garment and mark where you want the pocket to go. Pin to see how big the opening should be and pick the seam. Keeping the dress inside out, pin the pocket in place so that the right sides of the fabric are together. Stitch the pocket in place, making sure not to catch any of the other fabric. When you turn the garment right side in, the pattern side of the pocket will be on the inside. Then just do a top stitch and your pocket is done. Here are some sewing essentials you need in addition to your sewing machine. The bare necessity of what you need are a good pair of sewing scissors, some spare needles for your machine as well as hand needles, a lot of straight pins, and a seam ripper. Some extra tools that are worth having: a cutting mat and sewing ruler, rotary cutters, some fine point sewing scissors, sewing clips, safety pins, and more pins, and a tape measure. So today I'm going to try and show you how to do a manual buttonhole. Start off by placing your button where you want it to sit on your fabric. Mark the widest points of the button with horizontal lines and connect them down the middle with a straight vertical line. This will be your guide. Switch your machine to a zigzag setting and lower the length as low as it'll go. Position your guide so that the center mark is at the edge of your presser foot. Then do a zigzag stitch down one side. Once you reach the bottom, turn your project, sew along the bottom, turn again, and repeat down the other side. This is only one way to do a buttonhole and the way I was taught. I'm not gonna lie, every machine I've ever had has had an automatic buttonhole function, so I lack the practice to make one that looks good. Practice is key. Join me while I potentially destroy my hat. So I've been seeing these ads for these elastic back hats that make it so you can wear a high pony or a bun with your hat. And I'm the kind of person that I don't really like buying something if I'm not positive I'm going to get use out of it. So I decided to make my own out of an old hat. Basically, all I did was cut the back triangle out of a hat and then hemmed the raw edge down. Sounds easy, but kind of hard to maneuver inside of the machine. Once that was pinned into place, I pinned the elastic in this crisscrossy kind of pattern and stitched that down. Not sure I love the look, but it's actually super comfortable. I kind of have a small head, so this actually fits better.